How do we equip our families with a biblical worldview? How do we prepare the next generation for life? How do I grow in my walk with the Lord and in my marriage? If you wrestle with these questions, you are in the right place to find answers. Welcome to the Entrusting the Faith podcast. Welcome to the Entrusting the Faith podcast. I'm your host, Eric Rutherford, and today, I'm excited because I have with me Dr. Danny Huerta. Danny oversees focus on the family's initiatives to equip mothers and fathers with biblical principles and counsel for raising healthy, resilient children. I love that, resilient children rooted in a thriving faith. He's also an author, 7 Traits of Effective Parenting. He has spoken in so many places, written for just countless sources from the Washington Post, Fox News. But the things that I love most about it, though, he is a husband, he's a father, and he is a Christ follower. 2 quick items before we get to our interview. First, if you go to our website at entrustingthefaith.com, scroll down to the bottom, sign up for our weekly emails so you know who is coming up on the podcast for the week and who you may have missed the previous week. You'll also get a free resource when you do, and you can find all our other podcasts on our website while you're there. Feel free to scroll through them, find other interviews to really help you along the way. Second, this episode is just brought to you by my book, Leading While at Home, How Husbands and Fathers Can Biblically Lead Their Families. So if you've ever thought, man, I want to be a godly husband or father, I don't know where to start, or you've heard that you need to do something to equip your family, but you just don't know where to begin, well, if this is you or anybody you know, Leading Well at Home will show you how you can love Jesus Christ, love and serve your wife and children, and take responsibility for discipling your family. You'll be encouraged and given action steps that you can apply so that you're moving forward. Okay, now let's jump into today's episode. Danny, so glad you could join us today. Welcome.
Eric, it's an honor and a privilege to be invited to be with you today. Thank you.
Oh, it is my pleasure. Now, I did mention the book, 7 Traits of Effective Parenting. I know we could camp out and do multiple episodes on that, but I just want to introduce that source to the audience. So how did you come up with 7? And is there like one that's most important, or are they all equally important? I know, putting you on the spot right off the bat.
So one day I was just walking down the road, and then these 7, I'm just joking. So
well, that's what I thought, it was just one of those aha moments, right?
Yeah, those could come. That's correct. But it really was based on a lot of research. I've been a therapist now for over 20 years. And in graduate school, I began to think about the idea of parenting and that parent-child relationship that fascinated me back in the late 1990s when I was finishing up graduate school, my master's degree. And as I got into counseling, I started to think, okay, there's this research that shows that the ideal parenting style is this high level of warmth and sensitivity and a high level of demandingness and boundaries and limits. And so I was thinking that's all that research really leaves us with random research articles that would say, well, you could do this, you could do that. And so as I looked at the template, what kind of template could we put in place for parents that is solid on the research side? And so in my PhD, the dissertation, I decided to take that on and to look at all the research and how those come together to truly create a complete package plan for parents to be effective in their parenting of a child and raising them the best they can. Obviously, it's not about perfection. It's about a parent learning how to grow themselves. And then from that, how can they build in their child? And then how do they navigate that relationship? But it truly begins within the parent. What are these things I could be doing and growing in order to do parenting well? Because it's not just about raising up a child. You're being transformed and invited into something amazing as a mom or a dad, and your individual invitations in those roles. And they're both important in the development of a child. They're both unique and important, and together they're even more important in that life of a child. And so these 7 traits are really a balancing of those 2 concepts, the high level of warmth and then high level of demandingness. And though I started with adaptability because it needs to be that way. They're in order in the book. and our resources intentionally, because they build on one another and help sustain themselves with you working on all seven in that order. So the first one, adaptability, is the one that helps you adjust to the fact that, hey, I'm a parent and I need to begin to think outside of me and my world and what's happening, have that flexibility to begin to learn what's happening in my child, what's happening in my spouse as we're doing parenting together, what's happening around me. How do I begin to adjust to that? And then from there, the other ones begin to come into play. I mean, just think about that first time you change the diaper. The 100th time is very different than the first. And I still remember one of my first ones where my son just completely exploded basically into my arm and into the door. And it was a 5 diaper change. I go, oh my goodness, we're going to go pour. And what did I get myself into? And I was sleep deprived. And so that whole moment of adapting to that was kind of a wake up moment for me. I had studied all this, but now I was in the middle of it. And the adapting to my wife, her personality and who she is, required my love as well. But to know, hey, I need to know what she's wanting as a mom for my child. All those things set the table for the other traits to begin to grow and to take shape. So if you're asking most important, I'd say the starting point's adaptability. They're all equally important in their unique ways.
Okay, that makes sense. And you say adaptability, and it's like one of those aha moments, because I'm thinking back and I'm like, oh yeah, that's like foundational. And I don't know that I knew that going into parenting, or maybe I had it in my head, but I really didn't get it deep down. But I can totally see that, because yeah, everything changes. You talk about changing the diaper. I remember the first time feeding my oldest daughter, with a bottle. Like, I was in the NICU and they gave me the bottle, they gave me her. And like, I'd never fed a baby, and it was
that's right.
But you adapt, you learn really quick.
Yeah. And then each age and stage brings in a new adaptation for a parent, right? From then you go into preteen years, you go from them in your home to preschool, then school age, and then the friendships come in, and then preteen, and their body's changing, things are happening, and then the teen years, and then you're adapting to adult children. So each age and stage requires an adapting and an understanding so that you do the other traits well and bring them in, including boundaries, including grace, forgiveness, gratitude. All those things take shape when you're able to begin to adjust your mindset and really step back and see what is happening, what's going on in my child, that I don't have to be reactive or defensive. I need to be engaged. And what am I being invited into right now, and how do I take that invitation in a way, a biblical worldview, but in a way that makes sense and intentionally builds in my child with the future in mind.
I like that. And that raises kind of the question, because I talk to parents, and it seems like they sort of get what we would call the school age, early elementary, or at least even the young ages. They're like, okay, I sort of get this. And then, wow, they start going to that teenage years, and life just explodes in many good ways, challenging ways. What's the biggest change that, we as parents, that we need to make as we move from parenting what would be younger children to those tweens and teens? Is there any one change we need to make?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, one between spouses is making sure you're communicating even more. I mean, on a regular basis, where are we headed? What are we doing in the areas of like the spiritual growth? Are we on the same page? What's going on activity-wise? Do we need to say no to something? But on a more practical note, I would say that you become more of a coach than a teacher. And and what I mean by that is that you are still instructing and guiding, but asking the question as they're trying to figure out their own worldview, their own decision making, kind of warming up to the idea of how do you use wisdom? How do you pursue wisdom? How does that apply? Because knowledge you can always get, and the parents giving knowledge at the beginning, but wisdom is up to us. And that's where, in scripture, it talks about seek wisdom with all your heart. But that's for each individual to do that. No one else can do it for you. And as you teach your kids to seek wisdom, they're going to be imperfect, make mistakes. And that's really when they need your engagement and to love them most. And it's so easy to love your kid when they're being perfect and when they're doing things right. When they're messing up, that's when they need that love, that coaching, that gentleness. That means you need to have some self-care there as you coach them along, so that you're effective in that relational moment, because having relationships sets the tone for being able to, or sets the table for being able to have guidance and boundaries and limits that make sense for your child.
That makes sense. That helping them to seek and understand wisdom, and kind of that safe place to make mistakes. And I like you're also just going from that teacher to coach, because like my oldest is 15, so ours are 15, 14, and 11. And so I've seen that transition especially the last couple of years, and just the conversations and knowing, they're not 8 anymore. It's very, or 6, it's very different.
And what's interesting with that, Eric, is that early on, and you'll probably completely relate to this, early on, the invitations are coming from our kids, right? They're saying, hey, Daddy, come play, and they start talking, and they're the ones inviting us into that moment with them. And then in the teen and preteen years, we have to almost create the invitations. Hey, I'd love to talk to you. And that's a big shift, because some parents go, oh, we're supposed to be disengaged because our teenagers are kind of expanding out to friendship groups and stuff. No, this is where now you're the one creating the invitations that your young child used to create. Now you're saying, hey, I'd love to take you out for lunch, or you write them a note, a reminder of what you think of who they are and God has created them to be. You're creating moments of invitation that are now initiated by you. And that begins to show them that there's value from your perspective in that relationship. And it creates intentionality. It creates a necessity for intentionality in you as a parent to create those invitations along the way.
I like that. And that is true. I know with schedules and everything else, we're kind of all over the board. So my oldest, my 15, 14-year-old are my daughters. My son is 11. And I usually try to, maybe once a quarter, hopefully, try to at least go out to dinner with them and have some intentional conversations. Those are events. But what I found is, especially with my daughters, like in the car going somewhere, like to wherever it is, maybe I'm dropping them off at a class or at a rehearsal or something, and just trying to ask a lot of questions, and seeing where it goes. And I've learned to appreciate those times and try to do something with those, because like you say, I don't get the invites from them anymore.
Yeah. Now, let's say you're going to the store or somewhere. I love to tell my daughter or my son, hey, I'd love to hang out with you. Do you mind coming to the store with me? I'd love to have you with me, because I enjoy your company and you help me out a lot. I would love for us to spend that time together. Maybe we can get dinner right after, whatever that would be. But I'm initiating the invitation. And sometimes we'll joke around, hey, I'd love to be penciled into that calendar of yours with basketball and everything. Could I kind of sneak in there a little bit? And last night, in fact, my son, I got home, he was home, he was going to have basketball practice, and we had this chunk of time, and he had homework to do. It was really neat to see him pause. And I said, I'd love to hang out for just a moment. Do you have time for that? Instead of him asking me, I needed to ask. And that puts me in a position of saying, I want to know you, son. And I want to stay engaged. And my daughter's well. And we hung out for a little while. And we had plenty of other things to do. But taking that time to do that is important. And maybe they can come up with ideas of a fun way to do those moments. That could be 10 minutes, 30 minutes. My son and I have done the 10-minute workout sometimes, where that's all we have time for. Hey, let's work out together. Let's do 10 minutes. And we do a quick one, but it's something we've learned to do together.
Oh, that's awesome. I like that. Just inviting them along, saying, hey, let's just do this. Even if it's even a short time, like you say, even if it's 10 minutes, but just asking them, that it is a definite, it's a change in dynamics
Yes.
that I did not expect. I have to admit. But neat. It's great seeing them as they mature. And so let me ask this: as for our children who are moving into their teen years, so people listening, they're like, okay, that's great. My oldest is like 9, right? And I've got 4, and the oldest is 9. So we're not to the teen years yet, and we're still not sleeping. But what can we do for them? What's the best thing for families like that? Or even, even like mine, even at 11, 15, we're still equipping. But what can we do to help prepare our children for the teen years?
There's so many things, and we actually developed a resource for that, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But it's really helping them understand that they are contributors in God's kingdom story rather than consumers here. That mindset is so important for kids to understand as they're growing into the teen years, because then dating is looked at differently. Friendships are looked at differently. The pursuit of careers looked at from a different lens. So helping them understand, what does it mean to be a contributor in people's lives and what God has for them? Teach them to reach for the better thought. There's plenty of thoughts out there that we get. Try to really find that better one. Which one's a better one? You might think this: a thought isn't bad until it becomes an action, right? So sometimes temptations come in there, but is there a better thought? And help them learn to look at that and sift through their thoughts, because sometimes emotions cause us to just reach for whatever thought's available and go with it. And so helping them learn how do emotions and thoughts interact with one another, and how can you reach for the better one to create more of the emotions you're actually really wanting to have. And you can begin to help them learn those from an early age, help them have a language around emotions. What is it that you're truly feeling right now? Because emotions are just signals. They tell you what you're seeing and what you're thinking. They're not good or bad. They're just feelings. And so if you feel sad, what is the thought or thing you're seeing that's causing that feeling inside of you? And as they're in the middle of conversations with others or times with friends, is there an opportunity to reach for the better thought that will make a difference in how you act in that moment? If they can get that going into the teen years, they're going to make some good decisions. They're going to stop and see a stop sign and think carefully in that social environment. Is there better thought? Is there something here that I need to be paying attention to? So creating that awareness will help a teen do very well at moment. Not perfect, right? They'll make mistakes, but it'll help them make better decisions along the way and pursue the things they need to pursue.
I like that. Teaching them to reach for the better thought. And it sounds like even working with them, even when they're young, so that they get the reps, that repetition, so that when they hit those teenage years and the hormones and everything go crazy, so that they at least have some experience before then. Is that sounds like the best way to do it?
Yeah. The thing is that they, around the 13, 14 year range, their brain begins to go to this survival mode that if I don't belong with my friends, I'm going to die, right? So it goes into this processing that they need to feel connected and be connected. So that the reward for them is, I need to do things so that I feel a part of that community. And so at an early age, at 8, 9, 10, you have a platform of influence that will be shifting, and you need to be aware of that then all of a sudden the influence naturally biochemically becomes the friends is the more of the influence, unless you've developed a real good conversation relationship before then at 10, 11, 12, as you're going into that, where you have formed a level of relationship and influence in their lives. And that includes, hey, is there a better thought bubble that you found up there, and you can talk about, hey, I was thinking about this, but then I realized there was a different thought bubble and I reached for that one. That one worked out really well for me. And so just talking through thought bubbles and what potential ones you could have. And sometimes you could stop a movie and say, what do you think that person could be thinking right now? What would you be thinking? And help them live life a little bit in those thought bubbles, and also consider what other people might be thinking and why. And what would be the better thought in their life if you care deeply for them when they're faced with an option or a choice that they might have?
I like that. It's sort of that taking a pause and helping them sort of step back and evaluate and sort of think through things. I don't want to say using logic, and I don't want to say, unemotionally, but at least trying to get a little bit of perspective on what they're doing in that moment so that it's not quite as overwhelming. That sounds like what you're talking about?
Yeah, and that's good. Yeah, and then when they're with you, you can ask them, "Hey, what do you think? What do you think about this? What do you think about that?" Help them learn to kind of think through. What am I thinking? Think about their thinking, not just live in them. But what do you think about this? And help them learn to know and articulate, "Oh, well, this is what I think about that." Or ask them, "What do you think I'm thinking about this?" And have them practice trying to see if they can kind of read your thought bubbles without seeing them, and just have fun with it. Make it fun. And if they guess it, you go, "Man, that is incredible. You must have superpowers. Let's let's celebrate that." And so then you could parents are so creative, and you can be creative in managing and stepping into that thought world that kids many times just live in rather than pause and really think about.
Ah, love that. I love that. I'll have to start doing that and using that example, because I think it's just brilliant in terms of just visually and the way I'm thinking. I love it. So I'm definitely gonna have to use that and share that. Now, you were part of Focus on the Families, the team that put together launch into the teen years. And so for those who aren't familiar with it, would you just share a little bit about what that is and sort of who that's for?
Yeah, no, I love that resource. It's for parents of kids 8 to 12. And it's really about truly launching well into the teen years, that preparation. And we hit the topics we hit are identity as a child of God, then the friendships and navigating that, including bullies potentially in a person's life, then media, technology, entertainment, and then the gender, male, female, what does that mean? And then my body, what's happening in my body in those 8 to 12-year-old times, and then sex. What is sex? Why did God design that? The gift that's given there, and the gift that a person gets to give by bringing their body into that relationship and that connectedness that's so deep that God designed. And so setting up this conversation for the parent in a very creative way. This resource is one where you can go away for a weekend or multiple weekends and go through each session. And there's a coaching video for parents, and then and there's a male-female track those last 3 sessions, and then there's a video that you watch with your child, and they get a journal piece as well. And it's a very entertaining video. We got to be silly. I wore wigs and coats and all kinds of things, and tried my hand at a little bit of acting, and we had some other great talented people provide an entertaining setting up of the conversation for parents in that weekend on those topics, those session topics, to help the parent carry the conversation and have them be the most important teacher in a child's life going into those teen years. And so we have coaching sheets that go along with that for parents at the end of each session. The newer version is coming out in January. We enhanced it. We polled the initial 2,500 people that went through that resource to improve it, enhance it. And so the new version's coming out here in January of this coming year. And it's got great enhancements in there, including the real detailed information on how you can talk to your child about sex and go into the science of it a bit for the kids to understand the miraculous beauty of what God has created there. And so we wanted to make it easy for parents to enter that uncomfortable conversation around sex with their kids, but also set the table that it's not just about a behavior of sex, it's about all these other things that are important to know about the teen years as they prepare for that biblical worldview around sexuality as well, with a culture that's coming up directly against them on the worldview of sexuality.
So it sounds like really it gives the parents this informational coaching tool to give sort of, they get to be the authority, or be at least that first, I don't want to say first responder, but sort of that first conversation with their kids before, and well, somewhat at least, before they get bombarded with all this cultural stuff that's coming at them. So it almost sounds like they get to hear about identity, they get to hear about all this other thing from gender from their folks, and then so their parents seem to have like they are an authority as opposed to somebody who's simply nagging them later on.
That's right. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And there are conversation questions, there are fun exercises that we put in there that you can do on that weekend and tell you what materials you would need if you want to do it that way. And there are about 3 to 5 or so activities for each session that you could set up and do together to make the conversation even more enjoyable and also more memorable along the way. Yep.
I love that. Now, sort of within that, as I know you mentioned identity, which is huge in terms of making sure our identity is in Christ, and we're looking at it from that perspective. You also talked about, you mentioned, I believe, technology and screens and things of that nature. Yeah. So what is something, with our kids, just sort of rolling from that, what do we need to think about with screens, especially for those tweens and teen years, especially? What as parents do we need to be thinking about? What do we need to take precautions against? What do we need to know that we don't know? Kind of thing.
Man, it's such a complex world that continually changes. And I just want to encourage parents to first model good use of technology yourself, that you're balanced with it. And second, know that there's so many tools out there that you can utilize to not only filter, but allow for your child to be in that smartphone space, but in a safe way. And then decide, what is one child more mature than the other to be able to utilize that tool. You have some children that are very conscientious, they love the rules, and then you have the impulsive child that is just goes, and then they're like, well, I'll just do it and think about it later, right? And so then one will handle the phone very differently. And so you need to set parameters around these devices, whether it be movies or music or smartphone or apps, with the child's strengths and weaknesses in mind, vulnerabilities, maybe we'll call them. Begin to think that through. Take each child and write down, these are the strengths, these are the vulnerabilities, this is their personality. And we actually have a personality quiz you can take online at bringyourbible.org with our Live It challenges. Back in February of this year, we took families through that as a challenge. Hey, learn your personalities and then think about what that means for each of you. And so in that, have a conversation about those specific personalities and how there need to be parameters that are set up that are different for each of those. And it's not about fairness, it's about wisdom. And so with the phone, the technology, and all those things that you're doing, know that there's places like Canopy, Gab Wireless is one that I heard about recently. There's Covenant Eyes. There's so many different tools and resources. In fact, we're going to be doing a Facebook Live here soon, highlighting a few of those to give parents awareness, because there's so many of those, and then you've got monthly charges for each one, so that can get overwhelming, right? But know that you're not a bad person if you say, "Hey guys, we're just not going to do phones or social media or any of that until you're 16." And then we'll consider that. I did that in my home. It doesn't mean you have to. There's a straight answer of what age it should be. I just figured when they're driving, there's a lot of responsibility that's given at 16. And I gave that as a goal to my kids. And I've done this in my counseling practice as well. Build trust, because that needs to be a foundation to the use of this. When you've built trust, then we know that movies, music, the use of phones, these things will begin to go well if we've established a foundation of trust. So you slowly give them some uses before the age of 16 around music. Hey, how do you choose that song? Why do you love that? Maybe it's a movie. Why do you think PG-13 would make sense for you here at the 13-14 range? Did you look into that movie? Hey, let's talk about the plugged in review and see why you think this makes sense to you, and that you're going to put that in your mouth, or not in your mouth, in your brain, right? Much like you put food in your mouth, you're going to eat something, you're consuming it, it's going to affect you. So those conversations, if they're willing to enter those, then you go, hey, we're still on that trajectory and that goal at 16, and we're going to you're going to get this new freedom of being able to use a phone, and we'll talk about social media if that makes sense. But it really, research shows that having phones and social media without any type of monitoring is super damaging to a child's mental health, and that's over and over again. It's shown in research. So, as a parent, it really would not make sense for you not to be engaged as you look at technology and entertainment. It's a matter of how much with each of the children, and what rules you put in place and how clear they are given to the child.
I like how you were saying that is it depends on the child, depends on everybody's personality in terms of strengths and weaknesses or vulnerabilities, as you called that. I liked, and just being aware of that. I like that, as well as just that conversational, like you were talking with movies, like why do you think this is appropriate for you? What's appealing to you? Because it seems like as you're saying that there's no accusation. It's just curiosity and genuine. Yeah, I just want to hear what you're thinking about, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It seems like that's a great way to approach it.
It is. And we've had our coaching moments with my son. I remember the first day that we came to my son and we said, hey, we have a contract for you for the phone and for dating. And he's like, what? Are you serious? A contract? What are we? And I said, son, it's just for accountability. We want to guide you well. This isn't about catching you or something bad. I want you to have freedom. And I'm one of the few people in this world that would give my life for you. And so I don't want you to be enslaved by anything or taken off track. This just gives reassurance that we're on the same page as we start. And then we have a reset place that we can go back to together. And it's about coaching and coming alongside of you so that you do this well and gain more freedoms and responsibilities along the way. This is out of love. It's not out of control. And I need you to understand that. So if we're stuck there, let's stop there for a moment before we continue, because we've got to make sure we understand each other. If it feels controlling, then let's talk that through. How does it feel controlling and why? And as a parent, step into those places so that it's out of love that you're putting guidance and parameters, not out of this need for control. As parents, we don't need extra things to control or extra jobs. We're already busy enough, right? And so when you do take on that idea of having a phone or that kind of thing in your home, know that you're going to need to be engaged. You're creating more work for yourself. And you do need to have some clarity as to what those parameters are. Otherwise, kids will naturally go to those edges. And my son and I have had great reset conversations where he said, hey, Dad, yeah, I kind of looked at, this, and it popped up, made me curious. All right, well, hey, you know what, son, let's talk about it. That's fantastic that you brought it up. Let's talk this through. What does that mean? What do you think was happening inside? You're not a bad person. I love you. There's a natural desire inside of you. And these things pop up to grab more of your attention and to hook you into that. And so it's as if somebody's fishing out there and you're a fish and you grab the lure, but you got away. So let's keep away from those hooks that are out there. And let's figure out which ones are shiny that you think you might go after. And let's put some things in place so that they're not even part of the pond for you. And so it's giving them those word pictures, what you're trying to do. That's important as you're having these conversations with your child, and know that it's not going to go perfectly, and you're not a bad parent if you let your child already at 10 have that. It just means that you're probably a tired parent because you're having to really be engaged a lot more than you needed to be at that 10, 11 year range. You created more work for yourself. That's all.
I love that. Just the freedom to be able to ask questions, to set some parameters, to know it's real, and just sort of building that relationship with your children. Now, you mentioned like the contracts, which we've kind of done with our kids with some devices, but you also mentioned like a dating contract. And I did want to touch just on that because, man, teen years are so much, it's just so much emphasis on dating, so much of, so many things out there in terms of that. What are the conversations we need to have with our teens in terms of that? And is it a different conversation with daughters and sons? I guess because I have both, and so it's one of those. Is it the same conversation? Is it a different conversation? I was just kind of curious. How is there an easy? There's no easy way, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
How do you handle that?
I love this question. Yes, I love the question because it's important to set up a framework for dating. We can enter dating as consumers, which is what traditionally has been, right? You enter with passion. Passion creates this desire for something for yourself to make yourself feel better. And dating can easily become that. You're attracted to someone. Wow, they would make me feel better. They could create popularity for me. They could, man, I love this about the attention I get because I'm dating this person. It's all consumer driven. In the contract with my son and my daughter, we talked about what does it look like to be a contributor in a person's life? This person, if you decide to date, maybe someone else's wife or husband, and how are you contributing to their well-being by being in a closer relationship with them? And do you encourage them? Your relationship with them will have impact beyond you. Now, you may get married to them, and that's fantastic down the road, but realize that rarely happens. And so you're contributing right now to who they are, and how are you being a part of that story in a life-giving way. So we talk about life-giving, contributing, and then the difference on what does it look like to be a consumer and what does it look like to take life away for yourself in that relationship, and committing to resetting to contributor and life-giving, because then it doesn't make sense to have sex early. It doesn't make sense to get physical early because it's not helpful for who they're wanting to become in the future, and that is having maybe a close, attached relationship. But it makes sense to have friendship, to have fun with that person, to enjoy who they are, to pour into them, to give them gifts out of that intention of contributing to their life. And it can be, part of the conversation can be different between the son and the daughter. And with my daughter, I told her, I said, how can you be respectful through your emotions towards who you're dating and through your intentions? So when you are getting dressed to go out with a person, what is your intention? I want you to be able to, if I asked you, hey, why are you wearing that? I want to know more what's your intention rather than what's on the outside. I need to understand your heart where it's at. And so if you're going to be dating, I need to have the freedom to be able to ask those questions and for us to have that dialogue, because respect is about seeing inward first. Spect is, the word for glasses. Re is to look back. So how are you handling yourself to enter that moment in a way that's pure, that's wholesome, that's loving, and that's contributing? And how are you coming in with your emotions? Are you trying to have this young man feel your emotions, your insecurities? Are you coming in a bad mood that's just really rude and difficult for this person? And then for my son, I said, you get to respect through your eyes and through your intentions. How are you being respectful through your eyes? Your eyes are either contributing and complimenting or consuming and wanting. They can't do it really at the same time. So you have to figure out in your heart as you enter that room with her, she's attractive and that's fantastic. And then what happens beyond that? Is it I want to consume her, or I really love her, appreciate her, and want to contribute to her life because I want her future to be really one that she wants to remember and that I want to remember. And so helping my son and my daughter see respect from their individual roles as they enter dating. And again, respect is about, I need to see inward first as I enter this relationship that could have so much passion to it. How do I learn about intimacy in conversation and in friendship? Because that's going to help me with my spouse in the future. And so a lot of things can be learned in that dating relationship that will be helpful for that next chapter. Setting that longer term vision is very helpful. I've loved the conversations along the way with my kids, and in my counseling practice surrounding that word contributors. They get it. How can I be a contributor rather than a consumer? Because we're naturally consumers, especially when it comes to love and sexuality. How do we reach for that better thought of being a contributor?
I love that. And that's such a paradigm shift, that being a contributor instead of a consumer. And so even especially dating relationships, that is such a great picture. And those are like things you can act on. That's what I love so much about just what you're sharing, is like, I know exactly what a contributor is, and I know exactly what a consumer is, and I need to pick which one I'm going to be, because I'm going to be one or the other, right? In any given moment.
Yeah, that's correct. And on the 7 traits, just circling back to that, the 7 traits, what I talk about in the book and in the research is if you work on these 7 traits from a biblical worldview, that's the key one, you are raising contributors rather than consumers. That's the goal. Out of those 7 traits, it's not about having a perfect child or the child that goes to Harvard or somewhere and becomes a professional, makes big money. It's you're raising a contributor in God's kingdom story, and that's success. That's the winning aspiration of those 7 traits from a biblical worldview. Because then all those 7 traits come together from the biblical principles interwoven in those 7 traits to direct and model to your child what you want to build. And that is, I want to build in you to be a contributor and to recognize your identity as a contributor in God's kingdom story. They have an individual invitation, and parenting, means to draw out. And in those 7 traits, you're drawing out the invitation of how they're supposed to contribute in God's kingdom story. And it's a process of discovery up until 18, 19, 20. And off they go, right? And you're drawing that out, and they get to be contributors, and you get to celebrate that with them.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, that has been such encouraging for me, challenging. I just several things I know I'm going to revisit just with my own kids and just in our family. As we're kind of running out of time here. I know we could talk forever, and it's been awesome. Where would you want, so if people want to know more about your ministry, about your materials, about Focus on the Family, where would you like them to go?
Yeah, a great place to start is focusonthefamily.com/7 and then traits. You can take the assessment, and then from there you can sign up if you want emails sent to you as reminders along the way, and we can send content to you so that it's right there. You don't have to go looking for it. You can go that route. Or you can simply go to focusonthefamily.com/parenting, and you can just start in the general parenting area with us. And we'd love to continually be pouring into you as parents, as you're really leading your child towards a thriving faith in Christ. And that's ultimately what we want to see. And again, that is focusonthefamily.com/7 and then traits. focusonthefamily.com/parenting. If you're having a lot of difficulty with a child and need to speak with a counselor, a professional counselor, your Focus, a free call. And you can call 1-800, the letter A and the word family. 1-800, the letter A and the word family. And you can speak with a counselor, dig into your unique situation, and get some counsel on resources, or maybe a counselor in your area that you can connect with.
Awesome. So if you're listening to this, I'm going to put all that information in the show notes. You'll be able to get to it really easy. Definitely check out the website. get a copy of the book and just get equipped, because as parents, man, we need it. We these are eternal consequences that we're dealing with. And so we really want to do all that we can that with all that God has given us to be able to build into this next generation and the generations to come. So Danny, thank you so much for joining me today. This has just been a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Eric, thank you so much. Parents, go get them. Be encouraged. You got this. Love you guys, and see you in heaven.
If you found this episode helpful, please leave a review for us wherever you listen to podcasts. Doing so will help others to find us. Check out the show notes for resource information. We encourage you to do that for links and other references. We'd like to hear from you, so you can message us your questions or comments on Facebook, Instagram, at Entrusting the Faith. You can email us at info@entrustingthefaith.com. If you go to our website, which is www.entrustingthefaith.com, you can sign up to our email list and receive free resources as well as upcoming podcast episode information. So check it out. Lastly, just remember, legacies are built a day at a time. So start now.